Hey guys, welcome. Thank you for tuning in. And I'm so happy to see everyone who has joined in. So, guys, my name is Avinash Bansal. I'm your host today. So, I personally have been a researcher, teacher, engineer, and an entrepreneur. I am the co founder of Tomoclub. It's an educational gaming platform for kids to learn social and emotional skills via live social games. But today we have Alexandra Macare with us. She has also worn many hats from being a teacher, charter school leader, and a developer to an educational consultant globally. And she's also a homeschooling and micro school expert. And she's a very dear friend, of course. So today we will be discussing a very interesting topic. It's like how to get your child excited about learning. As parents, we all want our kids to enjoy learning, and their education and well-being becomes our topmost priority. But in this constantly evolving world where kids are literally bombarded with information, right, at the pace that they cannot keep up, it's important to address how they should learn, rather than what as compared, right? So, but first, I would like Alexandra to share us about her journey and opening remarks on this topic. So over to you, Alexandra.
Thank you, Avinash. And I really love that you brought up to this aspect of how versus what, which we'll definitely get into later. But my journey, I'll just be brief and tell you that there is a common theme in my journey. I've been in the field a little over 2 decades, and throughout that time, I have been fighting to find a better way. I have worked with kids from kindergarten through college, and at every step of my journey, I have been trying to reconcile why everyone is so unhappy. Kids are unhappy, teachers are unhappy, parents are either disengaged or unhappy. And every time I went to a new place or to a new school, I was always filled with this hope that this was the place now. Now was the time where some door was going to open and they were going to let us out of the box, and we we're going to be able to make learning fun and go back to our natural curiosity. And every time I was met with the same resistance, the same red tape, the same ceiling, until a few years ago when I started to get into this homeschooling and microschooling. And suddenly all of what had been theoretical up until then about what I believed was a better way, I was able to put into practice. I was given basically carte blanche to work with kids and teach them how I thought they would learn best. And I don't even really call myself a teacher anymore, because I have learned that the what to learn is really more valuable when it comes from the kids. And I started focusing on the process of learning and how to approach learning. And the results were amazing. And after 3 years of traveling the world and working with families doing learning journeys, what I call them, which are about 2-month modules where we would take the kids' ideas of the what, and we would bring that all the way through to the innovation, where we would create something meaningful and relevant. And the results actually exceeded my expectations. And it led me to start a program called Always Meaningful Education, where I'm helping other homeschoolers and microschoolers, and even starting my own microschool to understand how to keep kids curious, to build on their curiosity, to build on their excitement, their interests, while simultaneously helping them to appreciate how collaborative effort is rewarding. So this year will be my first year running the micro school under the AIM model, and we have families, homeschooling families, who will be following the model, and some teachers who work with talented and gifted and special needs children are also interested in following the model. So here I am, embarking on a new adventure, and all of it is dedicated really to bringing the love of learning back into our kids' lives. And that of course brings us to today's topic, which is getting kids excited about learning, which has always been my motivation, right? Because I know that when babies are born, they are naturally curious and excited to explore everything, and they learn like little sponges. They suck everything up. And then a few years later, these same children enter into the traditional school often, and that just gets crushed. Their innate curiosity and desire to explore and learn suddenly is quelled, and they feel that they need to meet someone else's expectations or standards in order to be successful, and they fear taking risk and how will it look if I don't do well. And so getting the kids excited about learning, today's topic is truly where my heart is for kids, and I'm really excited to partner with Tomoclub to do that, because Tomoclub is really taking it to the next level. But yeah, I do have a little acronym, if you don't mind me sharing, but Avinash, I will let you talk. I'll try not to monopolize the entire webinar.
No,
Avinash knows me well. He knows he's going to have to cut me off sometimes, I think.
No, honestly, we both know that how close this topic to us. And sadly, as you said, that they start with a curious mindset and then it dies out. So again, to rejuvenate that excitement in kids is something that we have to work deliberately. So that's why this topic, and I know that that's why we can keep on going on and on this topic. But I would like to bring in that it's quite an eventful journey that you did. There's no doubt about it. But I would like to know the few ideas that you yourself have done, which has made kids excited about learning. So let's jump right to the main meat of the discussion. How have you made kids excited through your journey while teaching them?
Okay, thank you for that question, because that actually will allow me to share the acronym. So I didn't realize it was an acronym until I was just putting my thoughts down on paper about the strategies that I have found most successful. And then I happened to notice that there was an acronym there, which is SEND. And I thought it's really beautiful, because if we look at just these 4 or 5 strategies, we are really sending kids back onto this innate desire to learn. So SEND, the S stands for shared experiences that lead to questions. So I really find that when kids have a shared experience and they are with an adult who is engaging with them, that by asking them questions about that experience is building curiosity in them. And that's really where we want kids to be. We want them to be curious, because as soon as they become curious, they start to pursue the learning themselves. So shared experiences that lead to questions is S in SEND. Then E is empowering the kids, or giving them a voice in the choice. This is a strategy that I find universally every child responds to. They want to have a say in what they're learning about, right? Now, we as the professionals or the parents, we can guide them in the process and the strategies of how, but when the what comes from them, they are going to run with it. So by giving them a choice and a voice in what they learn about, I think everyone will find that the kids are going to be, the motivation is going to really increase, and they're going to be really curious, and they're going to take the learning, they're going to take over the learning. So the E in SEND is empowering them by giving them a voice and a choice in the learning. The N in SEND is novelty. So novelty sparks curiosity as well. Another strategy I really love is just throwing things into the environment that are new. And I don't force the kids to pay attention to them. I don't force anything on them. I just am strategic about placing some things in the environment and letting them notice and letting them ask questions, and then I take it and run with it. So novelty is another great way to get kids excited about learning. And the D in SEND is divergent approach. The idea that a lot of kids, unfortunately, when they are traditionally schooled, they have this fixed mindset about how to approach learning, that there's a certain way that they have to do things. But in reality, we are robbing them. We are robbing ourselves. We are robbing the future by limiting them that way, because we are discovering all the time that there are new ways to do things. So by showing them that there's a lot of different ways to solve a problem, or a lot of different ways to approach reading material, or a lot of different ways to remember things, by letting them understand that maybe they have an idea that someone hasn't even thought of yet. This divergent thinking also is a great way to get kids excited about learning, because it removes that idea that if I can't do it the way that somebody told me to do it, then it can't be done. So the D in SEND is the divergent thinking approach, letting them know that there's more than one way. So there's my fancy little acronym for you. I have obviously many strategies, but I thought it would be nice to focus on these four.
No, yeah, I totally agree with you. And we have discussed this before the webinar as well, that you have tried different style of like teaching, from visual, auditory to verbal to physical, logical. So there are a lot of strategies that you have followed. I think you were mentioning also about that creating an atmosphere of reading has worked out with few kids. Recognizing and celebrating achievements has actually also worked with a lot of kids to spark that excitement about education, right?
Absolutely. Yes. Kids really love to be working with their peers. I think as parents and teachers, we all really should look at that a lot more in depth, because we are negating the fact that peers, when they are interpreting something and they are articulating it to each other, they are doing it on a level that's much more aligned with the level of their peers, right? So they often understand it much better. So when things are collaborative, when they are encouraged to work things out together, to figure things out together, that also adds an incredible amount of excitement to the process for them, for sure.
Nice.
Yes, and actually, Avinash, just to touch base on your comment, also the environment, like a reading environment, any kind of things you can do in the environment, and that also comes back to giving the kids a choice and a voice.
Yes.
In my models, every time we start a model, we actually go through a whole process as a group, and I'm an equal member of that group, and we talk about how can we set up the environment in a way that is going to be conducive to what we want. And we can make things like a cozy reading corners with nice lamps, and we can set up labs, and we can do things. And when the kids are involved in that process, when they have ownership and a voice, it just increases the motivation. There's such a decrease in that barrier for educators and parents when we just take their input, when we respect their input and allow them to have a say.
That's totally true. When you said that, cutting yourself from one environment and getting into some other environment is also important, especially when we are professionals. We need a separate room, so we can't be working from home from our bedroom, right? So we need a separate place. Similarly, the schools does play a lot of role in creating that environment. So if you're doing it at home or you're doing it in other concepts, that you got to do such kind of setup arrangements. But I would like to know, if it's comfortable to you, if you can share me some relatable stories, where you did some changes in the kids' growth process and saw the results as well, with some kind of strategy that you followed. So that will be helpful for us to understand.
Yeah, absolutely. There are a few stories that are popping into my head immediately. I remember about a year ago working with a boy who was 6. He was a little bit behind his peers in reading and writing. In this particular group anyway, and he also was lacking a bit in motivation. So we had a shared experience by going out to go snorkeling as a group, and from that shared experience we decided to study the ocean, which was again a group decision. So we've already followed a couple of those steps. Then we got into studying the ocean, but we had to do some research and some writing. Of course, because as an educator, I want to develop those skills, but because this guy was feeling that he was not as up to par, he was reluctant. So I gave him a choice, as I did everyone. And I just said, how about if we all choose a person who we admire and we connect them to this ocean topic? He ended up choosing Elon Musk, and he studied the Fisker Ocean car, which is not Elon Musk's, but it is like a Tesla style car. And we conducted a play where everybody played the person in that they researched. Anyway, long story short, this boy went through about 6 levels, I'm not exaggerating at all, of reading and writing strategies purely because of the motivational factor that he was extremely interested in Elon Musk. So he wanted to learn about him. He wanted to play him in the play. And he wanted, because it was a group effort, he knew that everybody was counting on him as they were counting on each other to do well. So I honestly, it's really one of my favorite memories, because he just went through like kindergarten through grade 6 with reading strategies. And all I did was just periodically come back around to him and acknowledge where he was in the process, acknowledge the effort and growth that he was making, and target some questions for him to kind of guide his path. So that actually mixed up quite a lot of strategies, and it was amazing. He did an incredible job. His parents were overwhelmed. He's actually an avid reader and writer now, so I'm really happy to say that.
Wow.
Another recent experience was I was in Dubai doing some consulting for a family that was wanting to also have their kids homeschooled. And so I was there primarily as a consultant and to help them transition into the homeschooling arena, if you will. And the kids there was a lot of, I don't want to, I'm bored kind of language, right? So I just did a simple, very simple strategy, which is also about giving kids a choice and a voice, and it was called taking turns. So when we would start our day, we always write goals collectively. We start our day and we wrote our goals, and I just proposed the idea, how about today our goal is just we take turns. Teacher choice, student choice, teacher choice, student choice. And I made sure that when it was my turn, my activities were very hands-on and engaging and short. And then it was their turn. So we did that for about 3 days with complete success. I had a 3-year-old at the end of a very short period of time reading CVC words and writing his name, neither of which he could do before we started that strategy, simply by implementing this strategy where we were taking turns and he had a choice and a voice. He loved dinosaurs. He wanted to play with dinosaurs all the time. So when it was his turn, he wanted to do something with dinosaurs. Great. When it was my turn, I would be like, okay, let's twist up these word games and see if you can sound them out, or let's do matching. And by the end of like about a 2-week period, he was reading and writing. So amazing, amazing results by simply giving a choice and a voice.
Wow, those stories actually gave me goosebumps, and that was quite a smart incentivization as well, where again they feel at the place of a driver's seat, right? And this doesn't happen with only adults, but it's happened with almost every age group. So hats off, I would say. And I strongly believe, right, that every kid is actually a good learner. It just depends on the right motivation and delivery. So
yes,
like one of the biggest mistakes I think teachers and parents make is by limiting learning just in the classroom. Like along with the classroom, the intellect, social, emotional growth, even like academic growth should definitely extend outside the walls of classroom if we really want to enhance a kid's desire and ability to learn. And actually that first example of yours fit exactly into my thought process of extending it beyond the walls. So yeah.
Awesome. I agree 100%. Yes.
So now let's focus specifically about a couple of strategies that you just mentioned. You did throw a lot of light on the idea of making kids to choose. How about the game-based learning? I'm trying to take the discussion towards that. So what has been your experience with game-based learning? Has it helped, or was it a distraction? Would love to know your candid views on that.
Absolutely. Well, when given the opportunity to use game-based learning, it's always met with, I want to say 100% success. And I'm failing right now to think of a time when that isn't true. So I'm comfortable to say it. I'll give you an example. When I was teaching in a public school in Abu Dhabi, part of my background is a graduate degree as a reading specialist. So we had a big, the school was being evaluated and our students were being evaluated, and we had a group of kids who were really reading far below their grade level. So I was tasked with that, and I found an online game-based program called Teach Your Monster to Read. And I had about 2 months with those kids, and we played the game, I want to say twice a week for about 45 minutes. And at the end of the 2 months, all of the kids showed incredible achievement in reading. They all increased a lot. This was about 10 years ago, so I don't recall exactly the figures. I just know that every single one of the kids improved because they were motivated to play. Kids love games, right? They love to play games. I mean, this is, goodness, if all learning could just be game-based, then we would not have any more problems at all. So I have had great success with that. And every time I consult with a family that wants to transition their kids to homeschooling, I always share with them a plethora of online game-based resources, because I know that that cuts right into the motivation. The kids get excited, they want to explore it. And there's so many elements to using games. I mean, beyond just developmental content skills, which almost all games are geared towards, there's so many other elements to it. The non-cognitive skills, the social and emotional aspect of it, the excitement of it, the emotional state of the child's mind going into the learning is already heightened when it's a game and they're excited to play. And often the games are competitive. Sometimes it is against other players. The team-based competition aspect is, I mean, all of us always strive a bit harder when we're competing, right? That is, I think, it's like a human trait that we love to compete. So that is always a part of it, the competitive aspect. And again, just that whole experience of learning being fun. It's fun for them. So we can tap into all kinds of content skills, and we can tap into the social and emotional skills with the right online game-based programs. So.
No, that's definitely true. And we actually have yeah, sorry.
No. Go ahead, please continue.
And I remember that we discussed earlier as well that there has been a lot of research gone into this field. A lot of, case studies have proven that reduction in depression and, on the side of peer-to-peer interactions. So would you like to tell us about that as well?
Yes, I would love to, actually. And me personally, have been recently immersing myself in the research of a professor named Carol Dweck, D-W-E-C-K, for you parents that may be interested in following up, and her team of researchers, and the research that has branched out as a result of them. And it's actually really overwhelming. First of all, most of their research is geared towards understanding that learning, our mindset is not fixed. We used to think that the IQ score, that the IQ is what it is. And Alfred Binet would be rolling over in his grave if he knew that, well, even in his time, when he saw that that was the direction the IQ test was going in, he really fought against it, because that was never the intention. And learning is not fixed. I'm living proof of that myself, and the students that I've been blessed to care for are also evidence of that. So when kids have this growth mindset, they really approach life differently. And Carol Dweck and her team are unveiling amazing results where that's concerned, particularly in game-based learning. They have looked at, when they surveyed the kids, many kids, and I don't like to give stats without having the numbers in front of me, but I know that in Chile, they did studies on all of the kids in the school system in Chile. So they had a very broad group, and they've done in US and other places as well, controlled groups and study groups. And what they found is that when kids believe that their learning is fixed, or when kids believe that learning can grow, they approach things very differently, and their achievement and success is very much comparable to what they believe. So what they found, and I'll talk about the social and emotional piece of that in a minute, more on the cognitive aspect first. What they found is that if kids felt that learning can increase, they were much more willing to take on challenging problems and stick with them and persevere. And this was done both in a paper pencil type format and also using online games. And online games has become a greater emphasis for them. The center, the Research Center for the Science of Gaming is a great place to find things like that, information about that. And so they actually hooked kids up, their brains, they hooked them up to brain imaging, and the kids in the fixed mindset group and the kids in the growth mindset group. And they found that when they were playing these online games, when the problem was challenging, the kids who saw themselves with a growth mindset, the relevant parts of their brain were all lit up. Whereas the kids that identified themselves as having a fixed mindset, of course, they didn't use those words, the psychologists determined that, but the relevant parts of their brain were completely inactive. And in addition to that, when they put these kids on online game situations, they found the same to be true. The kids with the growth mindset would persevere through the challenging problems. They would just not give up, whereas the fixed mindset kids would often give up. They lost interest in the game. They wouldn't complete the game, whereas the growth mindset kids, I want to say 100% followed through and continued till the end of the game. So that research to me is so powerful, but beyond just the cognitive aspect of that, the thing that I think is really prevalent in society today, especially, we are seeing in the US, as we all sadly know, there's so much bullying, and there are shootings happening in schools, and kids are taking their lives because of, it's a very emotional topic for me, really. It breaks my heart to know that that is their school experience often. But what Carol Dweck's team has found out is that when this growth mindset is developed, and it can be developed in online games, they showed a 40% decrease in depression. So they surveyed kids, I want to say it was in New York, this study was New York based. They surveyed kids, they had them play these online games that helped build this growth mindset. And then 9 months later, I believe, they reassessed them and found that there was a 40% decrease in depression. In addition to depression, it also was addressing aggression. This is actually a really cool study. It's kind of funny. These kids were on an online game, and the game was to pass a ball back and forth to each other. Please check out Carol Dweck, and I'm sure this is fairly accurate. But anyway, what happened was one of the players would suddenly stop throwing a ball to one of the other players, and then that player was left with a feeling of being excluded. And then after the game, they were allowed to share some food with them, and they were to put some spicy sauce on it. Okay. Now the kids who didn't have this growth mindset, who ended up putting heaps and heaps and heaps of the spice on the food, and the kids with the growth mindset put 40% less. And they were also encouraged to write a note to their player, their opponent on the online game. And the kids with the fixed mindset wrote kind of nasty things like, I gave you a lot of spice because I know you don't like it because you didn't throw the ball to me. And the other kids wrote things like, I had to give you a little bit of spice because they told me to, but I know that, this was part of the game, and, just something nice, something nice. They participated, but they recognized that everybody's in this growth process. And I just thought, well, it's just beautiful. It's beautiful to imagine that an opportunity like an online game can help kids not just develop content because they're excited, because they love to play games, but it can actually shift their perspective and help them manage their emotions. So yeah, really beautiful stuff going on in the world today, especially with online games.
Yeah, that's actually quite an important study. I'll look into it. Thank you for sharing that. But I would like to know, like, while I was growing up, games were usually in the gray area, right? They were usually looked down upon as distraction or something that will. How did this transition come? Like, when did they shifted from a gray to more, I would say, in a good books of parents, or is it still, because I don't know, right? I would love to know from your experience, how is game-based learning still perceived? Because a lot of good things, but then there are a lot of bad things as well. So
yeah, absolutely. I think that there are a lot of misconceptions about it. Many parents still look at it as a waste of time. And I think mostly that maybe this is a harsh word, but I think maybe that comes from ignorance, just lack of knowledge about what's out there, about the kinds of online games that are available. And there's also, I think, some misconceptions about kids becoming addicted to games. And certainly there are games out there where people are shooting and killing, etc., that are not healthy for kids, that maybe they are getting addicted to. I can't really say when the shift happened, but for me as an educator, I was always interested in what was new and relevant. I remember Kahoot being one of the first things that I discovered as a strategy. And when I would put the Kahoot on the screen, I would immediately have, at that time, I was working with 7th through 12th graders, and it didn't matter. All of them would get excited. I would put Kahoot on the smart board, and they were instantly engaged. They wanted to know, and I was using it for data. I would use Kahoot for a pre-assessment or a post-assessment, and the kids would have no idea that that's what I was doing, but they were just eager to jump on board with it. There's so many other great ones out there. Splash Math and Brainly, Roblox, Minecraft, ABC, Starfall. There's so many valuable ones out there, and I think I don't want to discredit parents. I just think we need to do a better job of informing them of the value of the online games and help them navigate which ones really do have the maximum impact.
Yeah, and I would like to add one more point to it. See, I think there's a very stark difference between a mobile phone games and a desktop or a laptop based games. See, the point is that, especially with the social media coming in and the way the smart notification happens, that it hooks you up. So I am a very big believer, like I have nephew and niece, I'm a big believer of asking them to play it on a desktop or a laptop, because I know when it is shut, it's not gonna call them up. While on the mobile phone, the games are calling them up with notifications. So I don't know, I follow this strategy of, in a way that they know that this is the game playing time, and when it is shut, it is shut. So in a way, it controls the screen time. In a way, it makes sure that they're not lost in it. Like I myself know, we adults are sometimes hooked up to social media so much that it is a way of a game in which it has turned out to be, which has proven to be very addicting. And you have to, shut down notifications to make sure that you do it deliberately and it doesn't make you do it things, right? So similarly, I think on game-based learning as well, some kind of systems in place can definitely help preventing it becoming addicting and maintain the sanctity of its value driven. And especially the points that you added. So I got to know about Roblox, and of course, like my nephews and the kids who I have been teaching, they initially were not the creators. Like they were the consumer side of Roblox. So they used to play the other kids' game. But very few of them, like I would say like 5 to 10% of them started become creators. And I can't tell you how much it evoked the emotion of ownership in them, that this is mine. Like this is something I created. And then they will go out, talk about it. And especially those kind of things, when they develop ownership, they were talking to me a lot more. I would say those dinner table conversations, those, otherwise kids do feel, the making things come out of their mouth is difficult. But these games where, I remember there's another game which I introduced it to my nephews. It's called Peak. So it used to have games usually around math and grammar and percentages and logical reasoning. And what happens, it used to have a graph in it where they were showing their own performance against their own, which was like yesterday's. So it's like me versus me. And
awesome.
That used to play such dramatic impact on them that that kind of seeded the idea in my mind that, wow, games is something which is working out great for kids. I don't need to ask them to focus for the first time. I don't need to ask them, stop doing that and stop this, because they will automatically align, right? So
yeah, no, it's a great point, Avinash. And I, when I talked about the competition earlier, I could add that. I should maybe add that, because it's not just competition against others, it's self-competition. And perhaps that's the best form of competition. And online games, really the right ones, of course, give kids that opportunity to come back and revisit things and try again and try to do better and try to improve. And that also comes back to incremental learning, which has profound impact on kids, because it goes back to that idea that things are not fixed, that things that we can keep improving, we can come back and revisit, we can do better, we can earn more points, we can get to the next level, if you will. And it becomes an intrinsic motivation for them to improve for themselves. It's beautiful to watch when kids when they take hold of that and it's theirs, and that it's mine and I did it, and I stayed engaged, and I created it, or it was my idea, and then then they're ready to run with it for sure.
Absolutely. And here I would like to insert some reference of Tomoclub. I didn't want this webinar to be about Tomoclub, but that is one of the main motivations behind me creating this company. And I would like to tell you a story of an impact it created before anything else. So there was one of the sessions that was happening at Tomoclub. For everyone who doesn't know it, it's like an educational gaming club where we make games around social and emotional learning. So what happened was, in one of the session, it's like level based game. So kids start together and they can hop onto levels as they cross. So we had one kid who was stuck at level 3 or 4, while other was on level 8 and 9. So I was a moderator as well in the session, but the kid didn't give up. He wanted to, but we said, it's okay. Even if they have gone ahead, you have your own time. And he kept on trying, but then he figured it out. So at the end of the session, the moderator said that, guys, this particular kid didn't give up, and this is what it's called, perseverance. So this is a new term for his dictionary. And so cut to 4 weeks later, there was another session happening with the same set of kids. And this time the game was different. But when the moderator asked that, hey guys, what do you learn in this game? He brought up and said, I learned perseverance in this game as well. And the moderator was like, where did you learn that term? And he said that in one of the previous classes, Tomoclub. So I got to know about that. I straight away called up the parent and like, hey, is he using this term more frequently in his day-to-day life? And she was like, yeah, actually, he has been using that term specific in the right context, like 2 to 3 times in a week. And she also told me something which actually made my day. She said that since now he knows the meaning of this term, he has shown to be showing to be more patience and less frustrated at things, right? So
wow.
So this was
a huge win. That is a huge win. I am overjoyed. This is like filling my heart. It's wonderful. Wow. That's an incredible story. I love it.
And best part was, so this was something of our thesis, that when we actually, as adults as well, when we think of apples, straight away there's an apple image coming to our head. When we think of let's say aeroplane or Mexico or any kind of country or any kind of thing, there is an image that comes to our head. But when we think of soft skills, like perseverance, there is not usually an immediate incident, immediate event, which is triggering our head. So if we do that, you kind of instill that skill just by adding a new terminology with the right reference, image, video, or anything in their head. And then that creates the magic. So that's what happened.
And I don't know if the everybody in the group is familiar with Jim Quick, but he's a master brain. He helps people learn strategies for their memory, for reading, etc. And he has a line that says, an emotion combined with information leads to a long-term memory. And so when there's an emotional attachment to something, we remember it. It goes into our long-term memory bank. So I'm just yes, and if I may just piggyback on your comments there, that with regard to Tomoclub, really, this is one of the things that I think is so unique about Tomoclub, that's really not only necessary for kids in today's society, it's relevant for today's society, it's meaningful, and it's one of the few, it's the only one really that I know of that's tackling, maybe tackling is a strong word, but it does need to be tackled, doesn't it? This idea of helping kids manage their emotions, giving them experiences that contribute to that emotion with the information so that they can have these images in their head, these experiences to commit to long-term memory that lets them know things like perseverance leads to achievement. Collaboration helps people achieve a common goal. Being creative and thinking of new ideas is welcomed, and you're invited to do it, and there's a space to do it. And I'm just honored to know of Tomoclub, to know that it is working on creating games that allow kids to have those experiences, to build not just the content, which there's a lot of that out there, but to take on that social and emotional piece is just, it's beautiful. I'm so grateful you shared that story, Avinash. Thank you.
Thank you so much for those kind words. But I would say there are a couple of more people working on this idea. And honestly, I welcome that, because more people are working on this problem statement, more and more development will happen. So, and I will take here a liberty to show a quick video to everyone. And I think it's a 2-minute video, so it will not take a lot of time, but it will set the context right. So let me just.
My name is Libby, and I'm excited to have you here with Tomoclub today.
Oh, Lucas. My name is Jesus.
Hi. Zara.
I really like reading and painting.
Oh, he likes to read too. All right.
I'm a reader too.
You are?
I'm a very talkative person.
We are going to start by playing a game.
How do you make an alliance?
So now when we grow, we don't hit each other.
I need help. Help me, please. Yeah, I got Malaya. Oh, yeah.
No, I'm losing. Top of the leaderboard right now is Zane.
That is in my area that I'm getting pushed.
So you can use that to have a chain of 4s, and then once you click 1, you set out an absolutely gigantic push. Okay, timer. Lucas is at the top. How did that work for you, Kami?
That worked terrible, actually.
We have trade-offs. Like we have to figure out, like, if I make this choice, then I'm not going to have something at this choice.
I found them again. They kind of like exploded, and they made more squares and just kept making them bigger and bigger.
Did it help you get higher in the leaderboard?
Yeah.
The alliance isn't working.
Come on, guys.
It says Zane won.
I'm not as terrible as I did last time. I like going on my own.
At the top, Kami. All right.
I started in a corner, and it worked pretty well.
You came up with a strategy. You thought about the opportunity cost. Like, sometimes we can learn by watching what other people are doing first instead of just blindly following what they're doing. Thanks, everybody. That ends our session today.
Bye.
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 Hi, Kami.
Bye.
Hi, Sai.
I don't know how I'm waging a war on 15 fronts and winning, but I am.
Wow. Wow. Avinash, there was so much there going on. I mean, the critical thinking, the problem solving, the communication, the collaborating, the attention to leadership, and the value of not just following, without purpose.
Yeah.
Wow, that's so powerful. I'm so excited.
Oh, I'm so happy looking at your reaction. And you saw that, like Libby, the moderator in this session, she kind of brought up topics like trade-offs. She brought up opportunity cost. She brought up how you work together as a team in an alliance. So basically, again, we are kind of slowly and gradually wiring these things via an experience. And then when they come out of it, they will have a better understanding of these things, right? So that's what we're doing, and really excited of what we are up to.
Yes.
So, yeah.
And all of those kids looked very excited. And as Libby was planting those seeds and giving the kids the language about the skills that they were demonstrating, they were completely engaged and attentive, right? Because they had just been immersed in this super fun game. So whereas in a traditional setting, perhaps it would be really arduous for a teacher to get some of those points across. In this case, the kids were completely focused. And that's another beautiful aspect, I think, of the online games in my personal and professional experience, that when the kids are playing the games, their focus and attention really increases, because it's moving, it's animated, it's visually pleasing. So it's keeping their attention, and they are able to show tenacity at a much greater level than they can in a different environment often. So it was really lovely to see that, and wow, really impressive.
Thank you so much. So that's it. That's kind of overall we want to discuss. I hope there are few strategies that, our audience who are live right now, as well as one who will be watching this video later, can take away from this webinar, from various kind of environment-based strategies that you follow, creating environment, creating experiences. Game-based learning is one methodology. It's not the only methodology to get your kids excited about learning. Plus, I think we discussed a lot on the choices part. How are you gonna give them choice, make them feel that they're in a driving seat, and or the turn-based thing. I love that idea of turn-based thing, that you're gonna follow one thing of yours and one thing of mine. So, yeah, I think summarizing a lot of points over there, I think it's pretty exciting times where finally we are moving away from the very conventional method of teaching, and there are a lot of help as well. Like, it's not, otherwise, I tell you what, like, it was considered to be rebellious, it's considered to be weird if you were trying to do something else with kids education a few years back. Right now it's been embraced. So
absolutely, yeah.
So
and Avinash, some of the parents watching might be wondering, this just popped into my head, that I know that content and curriculum is often one of the things parents feel lost about when it comes to homeschooling or wanting to help enrich their kids' learning. And when we think about giving them a choice, that sometimes we think, well, they're not going to choose something, right, that is going to allow the learning to take place. But I just want to encourage parents that really learning every content subject that we teach kids is because this is what life is made of. Life is made up of civics and geography and chemistry and biology and reading and writing and communicating. These are the elements of life, of how we live our lives. So I just want to encourage you as parents to not be afraid to let kids choose topics, because once you give them that choice, you're going to find that you're going to find ways to integrate all of that. As a matter of fact, when I work with my kids in the learning modules, I actually ask them to look at it through the lenses of the different subjects, and I ask them, right? So we already all agree we have to improve in our reading and writing. We have to learn more about geography. We have to learn more about science and math. So when we choose a topic, I ask them, how can we learn math by studying the ocean? How can we build our reading and writing skills by studying physics, for example? So I just wanted to add that to encourage parents that by giving kids the choice and the voice in the topics, that's still a great avenue for incorporating all of the content subjects.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that ending remark. I think it's definitely going to be very impressionable personally. And now we would like to ask the people if they have any question answers, and we'd be happy to answer that. No pressure, but anything you can just give your remarks overall over the webinar. It can.
Yeah, I'll jump in. So I'm fairly new to the homeschooling, micro schooling. Actually, my daughter just started a very small school. I don't know if it's considered a micro school. I don't know where that definition lays, but I think they have like 40 to 50 kids. So maybe micro school.
Yeah,
I found that kind of my role as a parent, and I see increasingly in these types of schools that the teachers are teachers, but they're all just as much as they're teachers, they're coaches. They're really helping the child to develop themselves. And I think I hear that theme everywhere, helping them to become autonomous. Yes, and I think that for me, that's the biggest dividing line between traditional schooling and what a lot of us here are chasing after.
That's a beautiful point, Robert. Thank you for articulating that so well. That is definitely, I think, the dividing factor. And as I said earlier too, I don't even consider myself, I don't like to use the term teacher anymore. I consider myself a facilitator. I sometimes call myself the master learner, but I am learning with my students. And when I'm learning with them, I give my voice as well. When we're brainstorming topics, I give my vote, I give my idea. And when we're presenting to each other, I'm modeling presentation strategies, etc. And that is definitely, I think, the future of education, is helping kids to identify themselves as lifelong learners. right? So we want to give them the strategies and the tools when they're young developing learners, so that when they are mature learners, they can just spend the rest of their lives learning, right? Because that's really, I mean, that's what we all do, isn't it? We don't end up just stagnant. I mean, our brains are plastic throughout life. They used to think that plasticity ended, and now they know that it doesn't. So thank goodness for that, right? We can all just keep on learning.
Adding to that, I always keep on playing live when the sessions are happening. So sometimes I love to play myself, right, while during the game, and people are asking who is Avinash in between. I'm like, oh, okay, I have to get it. But yeah, thank you for sharing that, Robert.
Can I actually ask one more question, if that's okay?
Yes, please.
Sure.
So I'm, just to set the context for the question, I'm raising my daughter kind of between the US and another country, where it's a little bit more of a collectivist society. And everything we're doing here is very much an individualistic thing, which I prefer. Like, that's the society we live in. I like it. But I'm finding it really challenging to, and I want to know your perspective in India, because I know it's a little bit more of a collectivist society there as well.
Yeah.
How does all of this play to different cultures, where it might be a little bit less individualistic, a little bit more collectivist?
Yeah. I think it all depends on the community. So while growing up, I would say that I was like a frog in a pond personally, because again, all those 30-40 kids who were along with me, they were also, if I draw a demographic of them, they look very similar to me in a way, right? So technically, even if we are living in a huge country, your area of influence is going to be very limited. So the real learning for me was my vacation trips. I would say, I remember there used to be exercises in my school where we used to write like a paper on your travel diaries. That used to be very helpful while growing up. And then I would say, when I actually went out for some higher ed, that helped. So again, I think when I move out and I was living by myself, that was a really learning phase of embracing the diversity and becoming a global citizen in a way, because I lived in US for a while, I was in Dubai for a while. So again, I think traveling really helped. First earlier with the parents when I was young, and then by myself.
Yeah. Thank you.
And if I may add on to that as well, I think that I know from my experience, I was working with a family homeschooling 3 students, and they had brought up a concern that they felt like they didn't have a lot of friends, because they were not just a homeschooling family, but also one that traveled frequently. So they weren't always in a place where they could establish relationships. And that sort of led us on our journey of discovery to find Tomoclub, because we were brainstorming, well, wouldn't it be wonderful if there was a platform where kids, no matter where they were in the world, could get together and collaborate and communicate in a fun way, and then establish relationships and perhaps maintain them. So I think that your point, Robert, also supports the idea that some online game platforms, especially the cohorts, are really a great opportunity for kids to, even if they are in an individualistic program or society, if you will, that they can broaden their horizons culturally and experientially.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Robert. Anybody else want to add some remarks on any question that they have for us? Okay, I think the voice is cracking. Vivek, are you trying to share something with us? You can even chat. You can put up a question on the chat if it is possible.
I have something I would like. Oh no.
Okay.
Can you hear what I'm saying?
Yes. Now we can hear you. Now we can hear you.
Okay. Perfect. So to give you guys a little bit of context, my name is Vivek, and I have a 6 and a 9-year-old who go to public school here in Mountain View, California. And Robert, to your specific observation, right? So I think it's actually possible to have the best of both worlds. Like you, for example, I am from India. I just got back from a 7.5-week trip. It was like the best trip ever, the longest trip back in a long time. And what I've decided to do, it also incorporates aspects of what both Alexandra and Avinash were saying. which is travel. So what I've decided to do going forward is essentially spend June through August every year for summer. And specifically, the summer camps in India, again, this is my assessment, but they're roughly 10x as good as the median summer camp here. And what's better, they're 1/10 the cost of the median summer camp here. So they offer straight 100x leverage. To give you an example, summer camps over there might be nature camps where they take them out to Panchgani, Mahabaleshwar, Ooty, or otherwise similar hill stations where the kids play in the waterfalls, learn about nature. All this taught by experienced teachers who often have postgraduate degrees in science. And the reason it's possible is simply because the cost of educated English-speaking labor in India is straight an order of magnitude cheaper in India than it is here. So everything, food, clothing, shelter, and labor for kids' activities, teaching, enrichment, etc., is just much, much cheaper. That is, so I haven't done this yet, but this is what I plan to do next year. And I think that is a way for them to benefit from both many of the great points of American capitalistic individualist society, but at the same time witness a lot of the things in India. For example, on this trip to India, one of my most memorable experiences was when I, along with this educational non-profit, visited this slum in Pune. And the reason it was so memorable, it's so inspiring what the people in that slum managed to do with such limited resources and all these constraints. And the first thought that crossed my head was, I want to get my kid volunteering when they're of the right age in opportunities like this. So they're not living in their Silicon Valley bubble with access to pools and tennis and everything, but also look at the rest of the world as it really is. Both contribute and form friendships, because I think bridging those divides is what will truly enable the next whatever it is. Yeah, that's what I wanted to share.
Yeah, thank you, Vivek.
Well, yeah, sorry. I just wanted to add that that's a wonderful plan, and your kids are certainly blessed to have you as their parent, that you are making a plan for them to have this well-rounded experience. So well done.
Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, guys. Anybody has any other questions? Otherwise, we are about to wrap. Thank you, guys, for taking out time to join this webinar. And we promise to come back again with more and more new ideas and new conversations. So stay tuned, and thank you once again for joining in.